2 billion years ago, the Earth looked drastically different than it does today. Continents were different sizes, different shapes, and in totally different places. And right here in the Grand Canyon region, North America hadn't even been built up yet. But there was an earlier, smaller version of the continent, and that early continent was on a collision course with volcanic islands in the ocean to the west. And as that continent and those islands collided, an enormous mountain range would be uplifted here. So 1.7 to 1.8 billion years ago, mountains the size of the Himalayas stretched from where Mexico is through this region almost all the way up into Canada. Now the weight and pressure of that enormous mountain range combined with the pressure of the collision event, that started squeezing down underlying layers of rock, metamorphosing them into things like schist. While at the exact same time, molten magma from underneath the crust of the Earth was boiling up. That magma was intruding into cracks and crevices and folds in that schist. It took thousands of years, but slowly over time, that magma would cool down to create these massive slabs of granite. So you can think of that mountain range as having these very deep, buried root systems of schist and granite rock. Now, over millions and millions of years, those mountains, they start to erode away from the top down. And eventually, they erode further and further down until all that remained were those roots. Without the weight and confining pressure of that mountain range, that flat plain of schist and granite, that root system, started to raise from the depths where it formed up to around and just above sea level. So if you came here at the end of that process, a little over 1 billion years ago, this would have been mostly a flat plain of schist and granite, and the ocean would have been much closer than it is today. That's how this section of North America was built, but it was a time before California would join the continent. So the coast was likely around where Las Vegas is today. And that's how we got the very first bottom layer of the Grand Canyon. We call it the basement complex because it's actually the foundational rock that this continental plate is built on. And over the past 5.5 million years, the Colorado River has been carving into the Colorado Plateau. And over all that time, it has reached that foundational layer. So when you're standing here on the south rim, look to the bottom of the canyon as deep as you can see, and you'll see this kind of dark black gorge inside of it. That's all the metamorphic schist from the roots of those mountains. And the kind of lighter pinkish streaks coming up, that's all of that igneous granite that intruded into those folds and cracks, slowly cooling off. So when you're here at the Grand Canyon, you're looking down at rocks that are almost 2 billion years old. That's about 1/3 of the age of the Earth. And it's very rare that you can find rocks of this age really readily anywhere else. And those rocks are so old, it was a time before most complex cellular life existed. So you won't find fossils in the basement complex, one, because of how they formed as the roots of mountains, but two, there wasn't anything really on the planet to fossilize. That's how old the rocks are here at Grand Canyon.